Thank you, Chris. Okay, good morning to everybody. In the next 15 to 20 years, we could see a dramatic reduction on the approval of innovative medicines, because what we could call a perfect storm is hanging over now. And this perfect storm is formed by, I would say, three problem areas. One is regulators that are taking longer and longer to approve novel medicines, that is becoming more costly for companies, and every time we are seeing that less and less novel medicines are approved. Secondly, governments that are not willing to pay for these medicines because of the high cost of the healthcare in their budget. And this is partly due that thanks to medicines companies have made through the launching of new medicines, that people live longer today. That's becoming a high expenditure for governments, and that's one of the reasons why they are not in favor of spending such high amounts in paying for medicines. And then pharma companies. Partly as a consequence of that, the pharma companies are becoming more conservative because it's taking more and more money, and it's more and more risky every year to develop medicines. We can go more in detail to analyze these three sources of problems. What is the present situation as far as regulators are concerned? 2 decades ago, I mean, to put a medicine in the market took between 11 and 30 years, depending on the therapeutic area. And it cost on average $300 million US. Today, in order to put a drug in the market, it can take between 12 to 16 years, depending on therapeutic areas. And according to the figures given by big pharmas, it can cost $1,000 million, I mean, to develop a new drug. Then huge delays are happening now between the evolution of a drug in clinical trials, and those are what I consider dead times between each phase of the clinical trial. 15, 20 years ago, to go from phase 1 to phase 2 took only 3 months. And from phase 2 to phase 3, the same, 3 months. Today, it can take 1 year, between 7 and 15 months to go from one to the other stage. And this is dead time. This is time lost for patent life. And this is a big problem because this is dead time, and probably because the regulators want to be sure, I mean, of everything, as if they, at that moment, needed to give the approval, I mean, for marketing that drug. This is a big concern, and this problem has been addressed, I know, to the European Medical Agency, and they have promised that by 2016 they will revisit this problem of ethical committees to approve, I mean, one drug to go from phase 1 to phase 2, and then from phase 2 to phase 3. So this is a main concern, and this is something that needs revision. So what we are seeing in medicines that in other areas, I mean, in other kinds of industries, I mean, innovative things are reaching the market sooner and sooner, whereas here, medicines are reaching the market later and later. What is the present situation as far as governments are concerned? So governments are very reluctant now to finance healthcare expenses. Today, people live longer thanks to medicines, and because of that, I mean, healthcare expenses are becoming higher and higher. Maybe for this reason, or partly because of this reason, governments is taking longer to give price, to approve medicines, and then to reimburse these medicines. And certain countries are delaying in excess the payments for those medicines. And this situation is getting worse, at least in southern European countries. In other industries, inflation is reflected in the prices of the products, whereas here, in medicines, what we are seeing is the price eroding since the very initial moment of the first price to be granted. Then there is another problem. In United States, when FDA gives authorization for marketing, more or less the drugs can be marketed straight away. In Europe, no. In Europe, once a drug has been approved by the European Commission, then there is a sort of via crucis, I mean, and the company has to go country by country, negotiating price, negotiating reimbursement, and this means that in the 27 countries of the European Union, it can take up to between 2 and 4 years to have the drug marketed. So this is, again, 2 to 4 years of more patent life expired. Also, governments are cutting back a great deal on R&D. For instance, to quote an example, there has been a 20% reduction on the NIH budget in the United States in the last decade. That means $600 million US. And governments are very interested, I mean, in having generic products as soon as possible in the market. And that goes, I think, against the interest of research on novel medicines. The rigid defense of generics on the part of governments causes a vicious cycle, since the pressure exerted for them to enter as soon as possible the market, on top of the fact that innovative medicines are taking longer and longer, the companies developing innovative drugs try to recover, I mean, the expenditure on the research of these novel medicines in a shorter time. For that, they are trying to get higher prices. So we are in a vicious circle. And what is the situation of the big pharmas? Chairmen and CEOs of big pharmas have to get an exam in front of the shareholders every year in the annual shareholders meeting. And So very often, I mean, what is sacrificed is the expenditure on R&D, because results are risky and will be seen in 15 years' time. And sometimes it's easy to cut, I mean, on R&D because of that. So to give you an example, if really to develop a novel drug, on average, according to the figures given by the big pharmas, could cost $1,000 million, it's understandable that some of the decision makers could, instead of investing $1,000 million in developing a novel drug with the risk inherent to research, to spend those $1,000 million in buying a generic company or a cosmetic company or doing a different type of investment with this money. It is estimated that investment in R&D in the US pharmaceutical industry will drop this year 5.7%. For some time now, an aversion to risk has been developed in these big pharma companies on part of the decision makers, because they are becoming more careful in not making mistakes in the decisions they take. So for this reason, we are seeing that sometimes what suffers is the innovative research. In this perfect storm, what I see is a common denominator, that is risk aversion. Risk aversion on regulators, because they want to be 100% sure of every approval they give. And to be 100% sure takes longer and longer and longer. Then also, big pharma companies, because of the situation, the decision makers are becoming risk averse, because sometimes if they make errors, their job is in risk. And also investors, I mean, are becoming more risk averse, because we are seeing that it's more and more difficult to get drugs approved. And then probably governments also are becoming risk averse, but probably there is a lack of vision and coordination also on the side of governments. For these reasons, I think it's important the discussions that we are going to have here, because if we want to see innovative medicines in 15, 20 years from now, maybe we need to start thinking what to do to correct this situation, because we have a problem now if we are seeing what's going to happen in 15, 20 years. Thank you very much.